Welcome, friends. Today I'm excited to have you. We're making my favorite pulled pork. It's injected, rubbed, smoked for 12 hours plus, depending on what temperature you do it at. And whether it's your first time or if you're just looking for a new recipe, this one's going to be a home run for you. Let's take a look at what we got so far, and then I'll show you how we got here, and then take you to the finish line. All right, time to get the fire started. We got our lump charcoal in there. I'm just gonna light up a tumbleweed, throw it right on top, and then I'll just gently put a few pieces of charcoal around the tumbleweed, but not so much that I smash it. So this is the way I get the charcoal started if I'm not using a chimney. So a little teepee effect there. We'll just let it go, and then we'll get the flame boss going to get this temperature ramped up while we prepare our marvelous pork butt. While we wait for the tumbleweed to get the fire going here, just thought we'd talk about general setup while we have a beer together. We're drinking Two Hearted, great Northwest beer here in Iowa. I can get it. I'm really happy about it. Love it. But setup, generally I use just a grate with a drip pan beneath it, and I pour a beer in there to get it started. After the pork butt starts rendering down, it'll drip enough fat. You don't need to add more moisture to the green egg. The green egg's going to do it all by itself. But I do add a beer generally before I smoke large items like this. So we'll add a beer, throw this on, get the flame boss kicking while we prepare the pork butt. All right, it's time to prep our pork butt. We're gonna do this in a few steps. We're gonna get our little cocktail injection going. You don't have to do this, but it does give it more flavor and more juiciness in the end. So if I'm having company over, this is the way I do it. And this is one of the first recipes that really did amazing on my website. So it's a good one. I would stick with it. So we're gonna make a little cocktail, and all we're gonna do is use about 1/3 olive oil, so a couple tablespoons, and then we're going to put in about 4 tablespoons of butter, and then we're going to put in about the same amount of apple cider vinegar. And for this, I like to use a commercial rub, something like the Killer Hogs, or I also like the Yardbirds rub as well. Plowboy's Yardbird is really good rub, but I like to use commercial rub for this cocktail because I like to be pretty fine ground. So if I make my own rub, it's going to be more coarse. It could potentially clog up this little injector here. I like the small injector better than the large injector for most things. So we're using this, and all we're going to do is put in about 2 tablespoons. And that's going to just provide a nice flavor for the pork interior, because it's a big piece of meat. This is almost 10 pounds. And we'll rub the heck out of it from the outside with my own rub, which you'll see here in a second, which I'll put the recipe down below in the show notes. But we're going to heat this up, melt the butter, get it all mixed together, and then we'll trim the pork and put it together. So it's going to be good. All right, it's time to trim, and this is real simple. All we're really looking to do is just take off this fat cap. We don't need much of it at all. Certainly don't need a 1/4 or a 1/2 inch. Pork butt has a ton of fat in it, which is good. That's why it's so easy to smoke, and why we don't need this fat cap on here. We want to develop a nice bark that we can eat. If you leave this fat cap on, it's real thick. A lot of times you just almost have to dispose of it afterwards, in my opinion. So we can leave some of it on there, but in general, we're going to take the good part of it off. Okay, so we are done. We can see that we got some fat on the top, but we've taken the majority of the fat off. And if there's any loose parts in the bottom, you can take that off as well. And we're ready to inject, then rub. All right, so we have our cocktail here, and we're just going to poke in there, and we're just going to kind of work the needle around in different locations while injecting. And you'll get some overspray. It can get actually kind of hilarious. It'll once in a while you might get squirted yourself. So look out. And we'll just hit the whole interior. And I like to start with the top. I'll hit the bottom, and then I'll rub the bottom, rub the top, and then we're good to throw it on the smoker. So that's the way I think works best. The less you have to move it around after injecting, probably the better. And then if you have any injection left over after rubbing, you can hit it a couple more times. And it's gonna get messy. This is a messy process. There's nothing, it's barbecue. So that's to be expected. Okay, so we're waiting for the grill to just heat up for those last few degrees. It's almost at 225. Let's just talk about temperature, time, wrapping, all those sort of things with a pork butt in my preference. So I prefer not to wrap a pork butt just because there's really no reason to. It generally comes out fine without wrapping. The only reason I wrap in foil is if I want to speed up the cook at the end. Let's say you have company coming over and eventually you want your pork butt to be probably somewhere around 200 degrees. I don't usually check it that much because I go by feel. It almost wants to fall apart. But you're going to around 200 degrees finishing temperature. If you got company coming over and it's at 180 degrees and it's not very tender and you need to finish this thing up, wrap it in foil, get your temperature up to closer to 300 and it'll be done in an hour easily. So wrap in foil if you need to, but I try not to. In this case, I got all the time in the world. It's almost midnight. I'm gonna put it on at 225. I expect this to take at least 12 hours to get up to around 200 degrees where it's just perfectly tender. And by not wrapping, the bark's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be scrumptious. It's gonna have some chew to it. It's gonna have, a little crunch almost to it. If you wrap it in foil, it's gonna fall apart a little bit more. It's gonna be really tender, but it's not gonna give that texture contrast to the interior unctuousness of the pork. So that's the way I like to do it. Wrap if needed to speed it up if you're in a hurry, and also on the flip side, if you need to keep it warm at the end, the company's not coming over for 2 hours later, wrap it in foil, put it in a cooler, throw a towel on top, and you can keep it for hours. So it's always better to be done maybe a little sooner rather than later when you have company coming over. But my kind of general time frame is 225 is going to be 12 hours or longer, 250 is going to be somewhere around 10 hours, and 275 you can speed it up a little more, maybe it's closer to 8 hours. So it all depends on size and all that, but that's my take. I think it's time to put this pork butt on though. So let's get to it. Then I can have like a couple more beers and go to bed. Okay, so when it's time to put the sucker on, all I'm gonna do, put on a couple chunks of wood. So I'll usually start out with 2 chunks to start out the smoke. So we're just gonna nestle those down in the coals. Put our grill grate back on. We got a Busch Light to throw on there. That is the perfect beer for, just drippings. It's a lot of people in Iowa love Busch Light. it's drinkable. It's kind of like a bad Coors Light in my opinion, but hey, Iowa people, not trying to offend you. I'm from here. I love you. I'll drink it too in a pinch. So after that, we're just going to throw this on. And that's a nice big pork butt, so it's taking up a big part of the grill grate there. And I'm just going to close this up and not do too much. I'll wait another hour, hour and a half, throw on another chunk or two of wood. And I'm using cherry this time because I love the flavor. It gives a little color to it as well, so it's nice from that factor. Use any type of wood you want. I try to avoid mesquite. Other than that, I think they're all pretty decent. And we got this just cracked up here a little bit, and then we got the flame boss kicking down below, making sure we're gonna stay at 225 through the evening. So plenty of time here to relax, go to bed, and we'll check back in about 12 hours and see what the temperature is and see how much longer we need to cook it or if it's ready to come off. So our work's done. I'll see you in the morning. All right, we're back. It's been a little over 12 hours. Pork butt's doing nicely. I did bump up the temp in the egg when I woke up this morning to 250 just to try to move things along a little faster. Because I think we're gonna finish somewhere probably in the 14-hour mark or so, which is fine. I got the time to do that, but I didn't want us to drag it out too much longer. So let's take a peek, see what we're looking for as we finish this off, see what I'm looking for to tell me this is perfectly done. All right, isn't that pretty? Let's take a peek at this thing. So the bark is coming along nicely. What I'm looking for is it to set up a little more firmly. Right now it's still pretty soft, and which is nice. I mean, the meat is pretty soft too. So you're looking for the tenderness, which we're getting. And then that bark, we're looking for it just to set up a little more firmly too. So I like to get a little more crust on it. Probably pull it down and probably shred okay. And the internal temperature is at 185 right now, but we're gonna leave this on for another couple hours and it should be about perfect. So close it up and we'll take it off. Before that, let me just show you the bone is protruding, so that's like another sign things are moving along good. As ice falls down from my roof, that's what that was. But yeah, everything's looking good. We're just looking for a little more crust development on the bark itself, and then we're gonna take this thing off and shred it and make a sandwich. Okay, so we are back, and internal temperature is about 196, but you can see like this part is a lot softer than it was prior to. So every area around it, around this pork butt, is just really tender at the moment. So it's ready to pull off, and the bark has a little more crunch to it. So that's kind of the crunch that we're looking for. See, it's got a little more texture to it. That's gonna be tasty. Time to shred this baby and make a sandwich. All right, got our meat claws here. Sometimes the challenge is getting these off in one piece after they've been on here so long. It's been on here just over 14 hours, so a lot of time just becoming, I mean, it's, you just kind of push it apart. I'm sure this bone will just kind of pop right out of there. So this just, these meat claws, I mean, it's just, you barely put any pressure on it. And that, in my opinion, doesn't get much better. You got the little crunch on the bark for some texture. And then once you mix it up with the rest of that tender pork, and it's still plenty, you know, we took off the fat cap, but there's still plenty of rendered fat in this meat. It really just doesn't get a whole lot better than that. Before we make a sandwich, I just wanted to point out, if you really like this video, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Just give the video a like. Try to put out one good video a month. That might be, it's typically a cooking video, or it might be a video of building like a green egg table or something like that. So if you're into outdoor cooking, this is a channel for you. I certainly appreciate you checking this video out. Now, let's make a sandwich. All right, I keep my sandwich really simple. We're just taking a good amount of pork with a nice mix of bark in there. I just try to find the softest bun I can at the local grocery store. Something that's not overly bready, that's just gonna kill our meaty flavor from this pork. Remember, we injected it, so it's got flavor running throughout this delicious sandwich. And then for me, I'm really simple. I usually just take a few pickles, maybe some hot peppers. In this case, we're just using some nice kosher pickles. And then just a drizzle of homemade barbecue sauce that isn't too heavy. I really don't go too heavy on this at all, because the pork has tons of flavor. I've been waiting to try this. I gotta get in it. The homemade rub has a nice sweetness to it, but it also has a little salty kick with a tad bit of heat. I don't put a lot of heat in my rub because a lot of people don't like it too spicy, and this is usually a pretty big group affair when I make one of these. So keep a little more on the safe side, but still plenty of flavor. And the marinade that we injected that had the vinegar gives it some tang as well. And then the spices that we had in that rub as well permeates throughout. So that's good. I don't know. Maybe I didn't make it big enough. What do you think? Yeah, I think it's pretty. Yeah, it's plenty big. All right, I've taken a couple bites of this sandwich. It's amazing. You got to try it. Pork's still permeating heat over here, just kind of giving off some flavor and some smoke out here in the cold wilderness of Iowa here in the winter. But you got to try this. If you love it, share it. Give me a like. Give me a subscribe. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you next time in Seared and Smoked, where food always tastes better outdoors.